This Sunday, November 13th at 2:30 p.m. at Chapel Lawn, the Ring Out Handbell Quartet will be joined by the At Last Vocal Quartet in a concert that they are calling Bells and Voices. This is a concert that will feature traditional favorites such as Simple Gifts and Amazing Grace, as well as some less familiar selections performed by each of the quartets and together. Joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about this Sunday's concert, I am joined by handbell ringer and member of the Ring Out Handbell Quartet, Morna June Morrow. Hi, Morna June. It's
Hi.
Nice to have you
Chris.
here.
Glad to be here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to start the conversation out this way. When I was prepping for the interview, I found out a really interesting piece of trivia. Is it true that you were the first ever graduate of the University of Manitoba's Des Hotels Faculty of Music? How many students were in the faculty when you were studying there, and what has it been like for you to see the faculty grow?
Well, it was very interesting because when we entered the School of Music, as it was called then, there were 15 students and 12 profs. The first graduating class was in 1967. There were 3 of us in the first graduating class. But alphabetically, I went up first, so I can honestly say I'm the first grad.
Wow.
And I'm doing a lot of work. We have the Carl Orff Canada National Archives there, and I'm presently working on writing another book to update from the 40th anniversary to the 50th anniversary.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I was doing some reading about the University of Manitoba School of Music. It was like the School of Music, it started, I guess, in the 40s and then became the faculty in 1964 or something?
Well, the School of Music, when the building first opened, it was in September 65. And when we moved in there, we were still tripping over the carpet layers and the painters and so on. And, of course, the student enrollment has grown so much, and there's a huge jazz component. And eventually they were all over the campus until they converted Taché Hall, the former residence, and that is where the Faculty of Music, Des Hotels faculty is now.
And then they've since moved into that huge new space. Mm-hmm. Okay, and you have been ringing handbells for more than 50 years. I was reading you've directed ensembles in the Fort Garry School Division, which is now called the Pembina Trails School Division. When you were teaching, what drew you to handbells, and why has it been such a passion of yours for the past more than 50 years?
Back in 1968, my principal at Oakenwald School, Elsie Dewar, noticed an article in the Winnipeg Tribune paper, and in it mentioned that there was a set of English handbells at Techvock High School. And she said, if Fort Garry bought a set, would you be interested in trying? I said, I'm game to try anything new. Uh-huh. And I said, I did hear them in the Winnipeg Music Festival last March, and I was absolutely intrigued by the sound. So the bells were ordered. I didn't get them until the middle of March, 1969. And they came in cardboard boxes because they forgot to order the cases. They were like wine bottles in the cardboard cases. So I phoned up Fred Merritt, who was the first person in Manitoba in 1963 to initiate handbell ringing in Manitoba. I said, Fred, I have 25 bells. What do I do with them? There was literally no music written at that time for bells.
Right.
And he said, can you come over tomorrow during your lunch hour? And I'll give you a crash course. And I did for 40 minutes. That's how I got into handbells.
And it's been a passion ever since. Huh?
And it's been a passion ever since. The next year, they ordered the 3rd octave plus the cases for the other 2 octaves. And by 1973, I was totally hooked, and I bought my own 4-octave set.
Man. That's fantastic. Okay, so the concert this Sunday not only involves the Ring Out Handbell Quartet, but also the At Last Vocal Quartet. How did you hear about the ensemble, the At Last Vocal Quartet, and how did the 2 of you get to know about each other, and what can people expect on Sunday?
One of their bell ringers, Patsy Andrews-Vert from Starbuck, she made the contact with Anita Munn and about the possibility of could we do a concert combining bells and voices. And when the At Last Quartet came over to my house, Anita said to me, Miss Morrow. And I said, did I teach you or your children? She said, you taught my 3 kids at Bonnycastle. And so we had that connection right off the bat. And so we've just worked it out since then. We've only had 2 rehearsals with the group because we are the bells are accompanying them in The Lion Sleeps Tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is What Child Is This? Of course, is the tune of Greensleeves, but it leads us into the Christmas season.
Yeah, of course.
The vocal quartet basically is a barbershop quartet, and they'll be singing 7 selections, typical barbershop. So it's a real combination.
And a really mixed bag of stuff as well,
Yes.
right? So, what pieces, for example, are the bell ringers going to be performing? The Ring Out Handbell
Well, we'll
Quartet?
be doing 3 traditional hymns, and we're also doing the very famous Pachelbel Canon, and we're doing a contemporary aria from a composer that I worked with in 1982 in Minneapolis, and then we're finishing up with Swahili Siyahamba. So it's a real mixed bag.
Oh, that sounds great. One of the things when I was preparing for the interview, one of the things I was thinking about is arrangements for handbell choir. How does that work? I know, for example, one player will have like the C bell and then also the C sharp bell, say, and then they have to play those pitches when the music asks for it. But can you briefly tell us and describe for us how handbell music works and what performers have to do in order to play it?
Yes, well, originally, the very large steeple bells in England back in the 1660s, and of course the clappers would have a rope attached to it, and during the inclement weather, of course, it was very difficult to use. And so somebody came up with the idea, if we had a small bell in our hand, we could learn the routines. Once we've learned the routines, we could go back pulling on the ropes of the very large bells. So that's how handbells came about in 1660 in England. And originally, they referred to them as handbell choirs because basically all they did was take hymns.
Right.
So it was the soprano, alto, tenor, bass of the singers.
Uh-huh.
And I know in 2000 I was conducting 800 bell ringers in Birmingham, England. And they didn't call themselves handbell choirs or handbell ringers. They called themselves handbell teams. And it is a team sport because everybody is doing something individually. So originally, as you mentioned before, you usually have 2, like C and D and C sharp, but sometimes the D will appear as a D flat.
Uh-huh.
So if you have a group of 12, 14 ringers, basically you're responsible for 3 or 4 bells.
Right.
But when you go into ensemble work, you could have as many as 12, 15 bells. And on occasion, I have played solo bells by myself at 12 feet a table, 28 bells, and I am panting by the time I finish playing that piece.
Sure, running from one end to the other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I know with handbell ringing, there are real techniques. There's dampening, and then if you're playing like the larger bells, you've got to really make sure that they're swung out so you can get the full vibration. I think it's probably a good time. You brought some bells along with you. Can you demonstrate some of the things that bells can do?
Yes. Well, with some of the smaller bells, we can play what we call 4 in hand. It's 2 bells in each hand, and it would go like this. Or you can do a combination, switching whether you're ringing forward or doing a slight change of the angle of your wrist.
Right.
And you can do something like this. You can also play 2 bells in one hand together, or this together.
So you can get thirds working together.
Yes, so you usually tune them in thirds.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we play with 4 inches of foam padding, so we can create other sounds. And I have a larger bell here, and I'll demonstrate an echo effect where you ring the bell and just touch it lightly to the foam pad. You get sort of an echo effect.
Oh, that's great.
You can also do a sound that doesn't sound like a bell at all, and it's called a martellato. It's just thumping it right on the table. in The Lion Sleeps Tonight, we're doing ringing of bells, but we're also doing a lot of malletine bells, where we have the bell on the foam pad, and we hit it with mallets, wool mallets. And you have a much drier, more of a staccato sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have another technique which we're using in Amazing Grace, and this imitates the singing bowls of Thailand. And we take a wooden dowel and we simply rub it around the outside of the bell, and eventually you hear this wonderful sound, rather eerie and haunting.
The same principle as taking your finger around a wine glass.
Exactly. Yeah, the same type of thing.
It's amazing. It's great, all these wonderful sounds.
And also we're using chimes. Now, the chimes basically developed in Asia hundreds of years ago, where they would take different lengths of bamboo and just thump them on the ground to get pitches. And then about 100 years ago, they developed metal ones, and now they are made out of aluminum. And just to give you an idea, here is the one bell, and here's the chime bell. Very different sound. The chimes actually last longer than a bell sound. We can also do a vibrato effect, very much like a string player. This is a vibrato on a chime. I don't know whether you can hear it. It's better on the larger bells.
Yeah, you can hear it.
Yeah. And on the bell, I don't have a really large bell because it won't be as noticeable, but the really large bells at vibrato, you just loosen the grip and sort of let the bell wobble.
Right.
And that warms up the sound.
So all of these amazing techniques, I mean, it's just not simply ringing a bell. There's several different things you can do with them to get them to sound different ways.
Right.
The concert this Sunday sounds like it is going to be so much fun. There is a silver collection that's going to be done, and the money raised is going to a very worthwhile cause. Can you talk about what that cause is?
Yes, it's going to be going to the International Peace Gardens Music Camp Scholarship Fund. And Patsy Andrews Vert, her husband, Ron Vert, has been on the board of directors of the International Peace Gardens for many years, and he will be our narrator, and will be explaining that the proceeds at the door will go to the scholarship fund.
Mm-hmm. Very worthwhile organization. For myself and any other musicians here in Winnipeg, there's a very good chance you might have studied at IMC at the border. Absolutely. Morna June, it sounds like it's going to be a fantastic concert. Thanks for taking the time to come in and talk to us today. Where can people go to find out more details?
We do have Ring Out is a website that we've created, so there's some information on that. Mm-hmm. And it's just, we just invite people to come on out and hear bells and vocal group this time. Mm-hmm. And of course, the minute we go finish the concert, we're into that Christmas preparation. Yes. And Ring Out is totally booked for this Christmas, and we're also booked for next April and May.
Yeah, I mean, for me, whenever I think of bell ringers, Christmas
is Christmas time, exactly.
Top to mind. For our Classic 107 listeners, the concert with the Ring Out Handbell Choir and the At Last Vocal Quartet takes place this Sunday, November 13th at 2:30 at Chapel Lawn, 4000 Portage. The cost is pay what you can, and for more details, you can go to classic107.com and click on that events tab, and you can also check out the article about the concert that is now up on our website, classic107.com. Morna June, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Chris.